picture this. You wake up, you shuffle into the kitchen, you start brewing your morning filter coffee, and your smartphone lights up.
Like it does every single morning.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Like clockwork. But instead of an alert about, say, a looming recession or a notification that someone liked your post or an email from your boss demanding a status update.
The usual doom-scrolling material, basically.
The exact things that spike your heart rate before you've even had a sip of coffee. But instead of all that, it's a notification delivering a millennia-old Sanskrit verse.
Which is just such a striking image.
It really is.
Yeah.
So we are looking at a document today that centers on an individual named Vijay.
Right.
And Vijay is receiving these highly personalized, deeply profound teachings on dhyana yoga.
The yoga of meditation?
Yes, the yoga of meditation. But the kicker here is that these teachings are being curated and interpreted by an artificial intelligence guide.
It's fascinating.
It is. And the text we are diving into introduces itself to him with this specific line. It says, "The wisdom you seek is a steady flame in a world of shifting winds." Yeah. So welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is to explore this document, which takes this ancient philosophy and applies it directly to the modern attention economy.
And it is a remarkable artifact to analyze, really, largely because it forces us to confront how we consume wisdom.
Right, because usually we think of wisdom as this remote thing.
Exactly. We typically assume that accessing this level of ancient thought requires removing ourselves from the modern world, going on a silent retreat or at least like unplugging the router for a weekend.
Fleeing to the wood.
Yeah, fleeing to the woods. But this source material, it doesn't ask Vijay to abandon his digital life. It meets him right in the middle of it.
Right there on his screen.
Right on the screen. So we are looking specifically at its breakdown of two verses, shlokas 6.14 and 6.15. And what the AI guide does with these verses is, well, it's highly practical.
That's not just theory.
No, not at all. It isn't merely translating Sanskrit. It is actively diagnosing the era we live in. It treats these texts as a literal survival manual for an age where our anxieties and our distractions are systematically monetized.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that phrase from the text, monetized anxieties, it really stopped me in my tracks when I was reading through the notes.
It's a heavy concept.
It is, because it frames the conversation not around some abstract spiritual enlightenment, but around cognitive self-defense.
Cognitive self-defense, I like that.
Yeah, so let's get into the first major concept the AI presents to Vijay. It titles this section, "The Posture of the Mind," and this is based on shloka 6.14.
Right.
So the translation provided in the source material reads like this. "Serene in heart, completely fearless, and steadfast in the vow of discipline, the yogi should sit with a controlled mind, fixing their thoughts solely on the supreme as the ultimate goal."
Okay, so to really understand what the AI is trying to communicate to Vijay here, we have to isolate a very specific term it focuses on.
Which one?
The term is vigatabir, and this translates to fearlessness.
Okay, fearlessness.
But the AI is very careful to distinguish this from our contemporary understanding of the word, because we usually associate fearlessness with, like, physical bravery.
Like jumping out of an airplane.
Right. A lack of self-preservation or some kind of adrenaline-seeking behavior. But the AI guide completely redefines it for the digital age.
How so?
It states that vigatabir is not the absence of danger. It's the establishment of a core of inner stillness that external chaos cannot breach.
Okay, I have to admit I struggle with that definition just a little bit.
How come?
Well, when I think about the external chaos the text mentions, and it specifically lists things like economic instability, the blinding speed of technological change, the fear of missing out, those are real, tangible threats.
They absolutely are.
So if you lose your job because the economy crashes, establishing a core of inner stillness, that sounds dangerously close to apathy to me.
It sounds like sticking your head in the sand.
Exactly. It sounds like just ignoring reality.
Yeah.
How is becoming impermeable to external chaos a valid strategy rather than just a coping mechanism?
And that is the exact friction the text wants you to feel. It's a very natural reaction to push back on that.
Okay, so it's not just me.
No, not at all. Because when we are threatened by economic instability, our evolutionary hardwiring tells us to become hypervigilant.
Right. You go into survival mode.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We think, if I just consume more news, if I track every single market fluctuation, if I monitor everything my peers are doing online, I can anticipate the danger and protect myself.
Which is literally what I do every time the market dips.
Oh.
I just refresh the news.
We all do it. But the source material argues that this hypervigilance is exactly what the modern anxiety economy relies upon.
Wow, okay.
It states that today's world profits from our distraction and our anxieties. When your fears are entirely tethered to external variables, variables you largely cannot control, you are perpetually reacting.
He's just bouncing around.
Yes, you are allowing the external world to dictate your internal state completely.
Okay, so I think I'm getting it. The distinction isn't about ignoring the economic downturn, right? It's about not letting the economic downturn hijack your nervous system.
Precisely. It's about maintaining sovereignty over your own mind. Let's look at the mechanics of what happens when you lack that inner stillness. The text describes an environment of shifting winds.
Right, from the intro.
Yeah, so when a new crisis flashes across your screen, your attention is immediately seized. The shifting wind grabs you. And the platforms delivering that information are optimized to keep your attention by elevating your arousal and your fear.
They want you panicked.
Because a panicked user is an engaged user. You become a participant in their economic model. Your attention is literally the resource being mined.
So where does fearlessness fit into that?
Vigattabir in this context is a posture of resistance. If you have that impenetrable core, you can observe the economic instability, you can even make rational plans to deal with it, but you do not surrender your cognitive autonomy to the panic.
You don't let it sweep you away.
Exactly. You are actively refusing to be a profitable data point in a system fueled by anxiety.
It's really about weight then.
Wait.
Yeah, if you are light and porous, every shifting wind blows you in a new direction. You spend your whole day just reacting to notifications, to headlines, to other people's emergencies.
You're a leaf in the wind.
Right. So fearlessness, according to this text, is about being too heavy to be blown away. You recognize the wind is blowing, you feel it, but your internal architecture is totally anchored.
That is a very accurate way to visualize it. The danger hasn't evaporated, but your vulnerability to being manipulated by it has decreased significantly.
That makes a lot of sense.
But of course, recognizing the value of that anchored fearlessness naturally leads to the problem of application.
Because it's easier said than done.
Much easier. Knowing you need to be anchored and actually anchoring yourself are two entirely different things.
Especially when the environment is actively designed to keep you unanchored. Which takes us to the mechanism the text proposes for actually achieving this state.
Yes, the how-to part.
Right. It introduces another Sanskrit concept, brahmacharya vrat,
Yeah.
which it translates as the vow of discipline.
Discipline.
Yeah. And it demands that we become, in its exact words, fierce protectors of our attention.
And the phrasing there is incredibly deliberate. To be a fierce protector implies that there is an active siege taking place.
Someone is trying to breach the walls.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your attention is not something that just naturally replenishes itself without effort. It is a finite, highly valuable resource that is constantly, relentlessly being targeted.
And to explain how to protect it, the AI guide provides an analogy that I really think requires some serious unpacking.
That's a great analogy.
It compares our mental energy to a young sapling and self-discipline to a strong fence built around it. Now, conventionally, we tend to view discipline as a restriction.
We think of it as a chore.
Yeah, sure. We view a fence as a cage. It's the thing keeping us from doing what we actually want to do.
But the text completely inverts that conventional view. It asks us to consider the nature of a sapling. A sapling represents our attention in its raw, undirected state.
Okay.
It has the potential to grow into something robust and deeply rooted, right? But in its infancy, it is incredibly fragile. The source material notes that our attention is easily trampled by a dozen screens and worries.
A dozen screens and worries. That's such a specific modern image.
It is. And without a perimeter, the sapling simply cannot survive that environment.
I mean, if you plant a tree in the middle of a busy highway, it's going to get run over.
Exactly. The fence is not a punishment. It is not a cage meant to restrict the sapling's growth. The fence is an intentional boundary that creates a microenvironment where growth is actually possible in the first place.
So it's protective, not restrictive.
Yes. Discipline, therefore, isn't about stopping yourself from experiencing life. It's about creating the necessary conditions to experience life with true intention.
Let's apply this to the specific scenarios the text outlines, because it brings this lofty philosophy down to earth very quickly.
It really grounds it.
It does. It talks about deploying this discipline when sitting down to work, sitting down to read, or sitting down to be with loved ones. And I want to linger on that last one for a second.
The loved one scenario.
Yeah, because if I'm sitting with my family, presumably that is something I want to do.
Of course.
I don't need a cage to force me to be there.
No.
But the text suggests I still need the fence. So why is the sapling of my attention in danger? when I'm doing something I intrinsically value.
Because the threats to our attention are rarely physical. They're cognitive. You are physically sitting with your family, you're in the room with them, but your mind is incredibly porous.
It's leaking out everywhere.
Yes. The source describes how the mind inevitably drifts. It wanders back to a tense email you received hours ago, or it projects forward into anxiety about a meeting you have tomorrow morning.
Oh, I am so guilty of this.
We all are. Your physical presence simply doesn't guarantee your cognitive presence. The dozen screens and worries don't disappear just because you want them to.
So the fence is what keeps the past and the future from trampling the present moment.
Yes, exactly. And the text is very specific about how that fence operates.
How does it work?
It requires an active, continuous retrieval of the mind. So when you notice your attention drifting to the past or the future, you must deliberately pull it back.
You just yank it back to the center.
You anchor your mind entirely in the present moment and whatever higher purpose you have chosen for that moment, whether that's focusing on a work task or simply being fully, genuinely available to a family member.
Honestly, that sounds incredibly exhausting.
It is.
To be constantly monitoring your own thoughts, catching them as they drift off, and dragging them back to the center. It feels like an unrelenting internal battle.
Does the text acknowledge the sheer cognitive load of trying to maintain that fence?
It absolutely does acknowledge the difficulty, which is why it uses the word fierce. Building and maintaining the fence requires immense effort initially.
Because it's a natural for us now. Right. You are working against deeply ingrained neural pathways that have been trained by your devices to constantly scan for new information and potential threats.
Our brains just want the new shiny thing.
They crave it.
Yeah.
But the analogy holds. The heavy lifting is in building the fence. Once that boundary is established and maintained, the sapling begins to grow. It becomes more resilient.
It gets stronger on its own.
Exactly. And that growth leads us directly into the second verse the AI guide unpacks for BJ, which focuses on the result of this rigorous discipline.
Okay, this brings us to Shloka 6.15. The AI guide titles this section, The Harvest of Discipline.
The harvest.
Right, and the translation provided reads like this. Thus, constantly keeping the mind absorbed in the supreme, the yogi of disciplined mind attains the ultimate peace of nirvana, which resides in me.
So in breaking down this verse, the text links two specific concepts.
What are they?
The first is shankya, meaning peace. And the second is nyatamanasa, meaning a consistently disciplined mind. And it uses this direct linkage to point out a fundamental flaw in how the modern mind conceptualizes peace.
This was the part of the document that really challenged my own assumptions. Because the AI points out that we, modern humans, we treat peace as a destination.
A place to go.
Yeah. We think of it as a place we will eventually arrive at if we just work hard enough right now.
It's what psychologists often refer to as the arrival fallacy.
The arrival fallacy.
Right. We operate under the delusion that peace is an event or a geographical location. We tell ourselves, I will have peace when I finish this stressful project.
Or, I will experience peace when I go on vacation next month.
Or most commonly, I will finally have peace when I retire.
It literally turns peace into a commodity. Like it's a luxury good that we are hustling to afford at some undefined point in the future.
That's a great way to put it.
We sacrifice our current state of mind. We literally let the sapling get trampled every single day because we believe we're earning the right to build a fence 20 years from now.
And the text systematically dismantles that logic. It argues that peace is not a destination. You do not arrive at Shanti after a long journey of perpetual stress.
It doesn't work like that.
No. Rather, peace is a natural byproduct of Nyatamanasa, the disciplined mind.
But wait, don't we need goals? I mean, if I'm stressed about a huge project at work, isn't it true that finishing the project will alleviate the stress?
It will alleviate it temporarily, sure.
And if I'm worried about money, won't having a solid retirement fund genuinely bring me peace? It just seems dismissive of the text to suggest that our external circumstances have zero bearing on our internal state.
Well, the text isn't denying that achieving a goal or securing financial stability feels good. It's not saying money doesn't solve problems, but it is drawing a very hard line between temporary relief and true, sustained peace.
Okay, unpack that distinction for me.
Think about it. If your peace is entirely dependent on finishing a project, what happens the moment a new project lands on your desk?
The peace vanishes immediately.
Exactly. And if your peace is dependent on a retirement fund, what happens if the market crashes?
The peace is destroyed.
Right. because that is conditional peace. It is entirely at the mercy of the shifting winds.
Ah, so it loops right back to the idea of the anxiety economy.
Yes, it does.
If your peace is conditional on external factors, you are still porous. You are still participating in the exact system that profits from your lack of peace.
Exactly. The AI guide is trying to shift VJ's understanding of peace from a conditional future event to an unconditional operational state.
Operational state, I love that.
If peace is the direct byproduct of how your mind is functioning right now, if it is the harvest of the discipline we discussed earlier, then it is available immediately.
You don't have to wait.
You do not have to wait for retirement to experience it. You can experience it on a chaotic Tuesday morning while drinking your filter coffee, provided you are actively maintaining the fence around your attention.
So the peace doesn't come from the environment being quiet. It comes from the mind being regulated.
Yes.
That is a massive paradigm shift. It means we stop trying to control the wind, and we start focusing entirely on our own weight and our own anchor.
Because the wind will never stop.
Right. But realistically, how do we cultivate that level of discipline? Because earlier you mentioned that constantly pulling the mind back is exhausting.
It is incredibly taxing.
So if the discipline itself is draining, how can it possibly produce peace?
That is the central paradox of the practice, really, and it's why the text transitions from the philosophy of peace to the methodology of consistency.
The actual application.
Right. The AI guide anticipates the exhaustion. It knows that attempting to build this mental architecture through sheer willpower will eventually lead to burnout.
Willpower always runs out.
Always. So to address this, it introduces a second major analogy. It moves away from the sapling and the fence and begins to talk about the act of tending a garden.
And it specifically highlights a concept called sadatmana.
Consistency.
Yes, consistency. The text illustrates this by contrasting the wrong way to tend a garden with the right way.
And the contrast is vital because it exposes another huge flaw in our modern approach to mental well-being. The text points out that you cannot flood a plant with water once a month and expect it to survive, let alone thrive.
Which is just such an indictment of how we currently operate. Because when we feel overwhelmed by the shifting winds, our instinct is to look for a dramatic intervention, a flood.
We gravitate toward extreme measures because they feel productive in the moment.
Right.
The modern equivalent of the flood is, the 10-day silent meditation retreat.
Or the radical digital detox, where you lock your devices in a safe for the weekend.
Or attempting to completely overhaul your entire life in a single day after listening to a motivational speaker.
We want a quick fix for a chronic problem. But the text argues that just like a plant, the mind cannot absorb that much intervention all at once.
It just washes over you.
The water just runs off the dry soil. You feel great for a day or two, and then you are right back in the thoroughfare getting trampled by the dozen screens and worries, basically starving for the next 29 days until you attempt another flood.
It creates a vicious cycle of binging and starving your mental state, which is incredibly destabilizing.
So what's the alternative?
The alternative proposed by the text is the slow, often unglamorous process of sadhamana, consistency. A garden requires steady, measured nourishment. It requires a daily practice.
The daily grip instead of the monthly flood.
Exactly.
The text actually lays out what that daily drip should look like for Vijay. It outlines 3 specific avenues for training the mind: quiet reflection, dedicated study, or selfless action.
Yes.
Can we break those down? How do these specific practices serve as the daily water for this mental garden?
Let's examine them individually because they target different aspects of our cognitive and emotional framework.
Okay, let's start with quiet reflection.
Quiet reflection is the most direct application of dhyana yoga. It is the act of sitting, observing the mind, and practicing that active retrieval we discussed earlier.
Building the fence.
Right. It is the time spent intentionally strengthening the fence without the pressure of external tasks.
It's like taking the mind to the gym.
In a sense, yes, it's targeted exercise. Then we have dedicated study.
Okay.
This is about engaging the intellect with concepts that elevate our perspective. Reading and analyzing texts like these shlokas forces the mind to grapple with ideas that are much larger than our immediate anxieties.
It zooms you out.
Exactly. It provides context and stretches our cognitive boundaries, making us less susceptible to narrow, reactionary thinking.
And the third one, selfless action. That one feels like it bridges the gap between the internal and the external.
It does. Selfless action is about engaging with the world, doing your work, fulfilling your responsibilities to your family and community, but divorcing your effort from the expectation of immediate reward or ego gratification.
That is tough to do.
It is very tough. But when your actions are truly selfless, you are not constantly assessing how the outcome will affect your status or your bank account. You are simply doing the work for its own sake.
Which effectively neutralizes the anxiety economy altogether.
How so?
Well, if you aren't obsessed with the outcome, you can't be manipulated by the fear of a bad outcome.
Exactly. You've removed the leverage. Any of these three practices, when applied consistently, provide that steady nourishment. They are the daily maintenance of the fence.
And the text makes a very specific promise about the ultimate result of this consistent gardening.
What's the promise?
It says that this practice builds a reservoir of resilience.
A reservoir of resilience. I find it so fascinating that the text uses the word resilience rather than promising a life free of hardship.
Right. It doesn't say, do these three things and nothing bad will ever happen to you.
It is deeply realistic. It explicitly acknowledges that modern life will inevitably bring stress or loss.
You can't escape it.
No, the text is not selling a utopia. The economic instability will still exist. The technological landscape will continue to shift at a blinding speed. You will still face personal tragedies and professional setbacks.
But the promise is that when those things happen, you won't be swept away.
You'll hold your ground.
Your roots will be deep enough to hold you in place. And the text delivers what I think is the most profound statement in the entire document. It says that through this consistency, you anchor yourself in a peace that depends on nothing external.
That is the ultimate objective of everything we have discussed today.
It's powerful.
If your peace depends on nothing external, you hold the keys to your own internal state. You have successfully opted out of the system that requires your anxiety to function.
The world can't take away a peace that it didn't provide in the first place. That is true autonomy. Let's take a step back and look at the arc of this deep dive, because the source material has taken us on a remarkable journey.
It really has.
We started by confronting the reality of the distraction economy, recognizing how our attention is monetized and how external chaos keeps us in a state of porous reactivity.
And from there, we examined Shloka 6.14, which provided the tactical response, right? Building a strong, protective fence of discipline around our attention.
The sapling.
Yes. We learned that discipline is not a cage, but a necessary perimeter that allows us to be intentionally present, actively pulling our minds away from the anxieties of the past and future.
We then used Shloka 6.15 to dismantle the illusion that peace is a destination we have to earn through perpetual stress. We redefine peace as an immediate operational byproduct of that disciplined mind.
Not a place to arrive at.
Right. And finally, we explored how to make that peace sustainable through the steady daily nourishment of reflection, study, or selfless action, ultimately building a reservoir of resilience that depends on nothing external.
It is a cohesive, highly functional framework for navigating the modern world. However, as we analyze this document, we cannot ignore the inherent tension in how this framework is being delivered to Vijay.
Okay, yes. This is the lingering thread we absolutely have to pull on before we wrap up today. We have just spent the last hour unpacking a text that urges us to build a fence against the dozen screens and worries that scatter our mental energy.
It warns us about an environment that profits from our distraction.
And yet this profound wisdom, this instruction manual for cognitive autonomy, is being delivered via a digital screen.
It's incredible irony.
It is. He is being served up by an artificial intelligence algorithm alongside Vijay's morning coffee. The AI literally prompts him, suggesting that whenever he is ready for reflection, he can simply ask for the next verses.
It is a staggering paradox. We are relying on the very infrastructure of the distraction economy to deliver the antidote to the distraction economy.
It begs the question, can technology genuinely serve as the gateway to this kind of profound mental discipline?
It forces us to ask a very uncomfortable question about our own agency, really. If the AI is prompting you to be mindful, if the screen is reminding you to build your fence, who is actually doing the work?
Are you cultivating internal discipline? Or have you simply outsourced the trigger for your discipline to a machine?
If the server goes down, does your peace of mind go down with it?
Wow. Yeah, if the text demands a peace that depends on nothing external, then relying on a digital prompt to achieve that peace feels like a massive contradiction.
It suggests that the fence we are building might be supported by the very shifting winds we are trying to protect ourselves from. It is a question that the source material doesn't explicitly answer, but the medium of its delivery demands that we consider it. Must true, lasting discipline ultimately survive without the digital prompt?
Right. Can you maintain the reservoir of resilience when the screen goes dark?
That is the thought I want to leave you with today. As you move away from this deep dive and back into the current of your daily life, pay attention to the tools you are using to manage your attention.
Are you waiting for a notification to remind you to be present?
Are you relying on the machinery of the modern world to teach you how to escape it?
Or are you actively, intentionally building the fence yourself? Keep tending your garden, keep pulling your mind back to the present, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.